Well, thanks for the invitation today. It's good to be out of jail. I actually look forward to going back because they still let me out at the end of every day. And Marlene. I'm a little nervous whenever I come back to Napanee to speak at a church. I'm a 96 graduate of Northwood, and I always run into old teachers. I don't mean that they're old, but you know what I mean. And I've ran Mr. Shively and Mrs. Fervita. I ran into my kindergarten teacher, of all people, a few weeks ago after not seeing her for 30 years. So don't talk to them about me. Just hear what I had to say this morning and don't go any deeper. I want to start by reading a passage out of Matthew that I think describes well why we do what we do at the jail ministry. Share a little bit with you about how I ended up as a chaplain at the jail, and to give you a feel for what we focus on in the jail. What I believe is our job, not just as chaplains or jail volunteers or assistant chaplains of the jail, but just as believers, the obligations that we have to the people around us. This is from Matthew chapter 9. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth. "Follow me and be my disciple," Jesus said to him. So Matthew got up and followed him. Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. But when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with such scum?" When Jesus heard this, he said, "Healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do." Then he added, "Now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners." I find that to be interesting and really convicting because having grown up in the church, I grew up at Wakarusa Missionary Church. In fact, I say that I say this somewhat facetiously, that I had the misfortune of growing up in just a perfect environment. Perfect family, perfect parents, perfect school, perfect college, perfect youth group, perfect friends. I mean, everything was just great growing up. I had really no struggles, no problems, never got into any big trouble. I got my ear pierced when I was a junior, and my mom thought that was the end of the world, and that was the extent of the rebellion in our house. So everything was just great growing up. Church was great, and unfortunately, I woke up, 5 years ago, my wife and I woke up through a series of events, and we realized a big problem with our life. And that is, our whole life was spent trying to avoid the very people that Jesus came to spend time with. And so you grow up in church, and everything is just fine and great, and church is often the last place that you want to admit any weaknesses or faults or struggles or addictions. Oftentimes, this is the first place we're judged. And so we just come to church and we pretend everything is fine. That is really the only difference between me and any of the guys or the women in the Elkhart County Jail. I'm able to hide my struggles, my sins, my weaknesses better than they are. They can't hide it. They're in jail. Everybody knows that they have some issue that they're dealing with. So having grown up in that environment, the problem is you never get to see the life-transforming power of the gospel, because everybody's good to start with. You never see somebody who has a mess in their life that God cleans up. So I was going through life, and things were really well, or comfortable, convenient. My family and I lived in Wakarusa, an old farmhouse that we bought, remodeled, thought we'd retire there. Our kids would grow up there. Everything was great. And through a series of events, like I said, we woke up and we realized two things. First of all, our life is built around staying away from the mess of other people. And second of all, when you read the scripture and you see people coming to Jesus and asking him, "What must I do to be your disciple?" he says really hard things, like sell everything you own and give it to the poor. You're not going to have a place to sleep. You'll be persecuted. You'll be killed. Just really hard stuff. It's like he's discouraging people from following him. And he tells this really convicting, horrible parable about counting the cost. Talks about a builder not starting a building before he counts the cost to know if he's going to finish it. Or a king going to war, not going to war before he counts the cost to see if he has enough men to win the war. Otherwise, people are going to look at you and laugh at you and say, what kind of idiot is going to start a building before he counts the cost? And the point is, count the cost. Before you call yourself a disciple of mine, count the cost, because it will cost you everything. And we looked at our lives, and it had cost us nothing. Having grown up in the church for 30 years, it cost us nothing to call ourselves Christians. And that's a scary place to wake up to. So through a series of events, I ended up working at the Crossing Educational Center. It's a faith-based alternative high school here in Elkhart County. And my first day on the job, I met this kid. His name is Robert. And we have nothing in common at all. It was really my first experience with people who were just drastically different than me. They looked different than me. They were raised different than me. There was no overlapping life experiences. But Robert and I hit it off. And we have nothing in common. Robert was raised in inner city Chicago, and I was raised in inner city Southwest. It's just a few miles down the road. And so there wasn't much commonality. But he started hanging out with us on weekends, for birthdays, for holidays, because he was one of these homeless kids in Elkhart County. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of homeless kids in Elkhart County. They're not sleeping under bridges, but they couch surf from house to house. They don't live anywhere, they stay someplace. They stay here for a week, they stay here for a month, they're here for a month, they're with this friend for a month, and you never know where to find them. So Robert's kind of spending some time with our family, and it was interesting, we realized, because one of my concerns working at the Crossing was I have nothing in common with most of the kids here at this school. The clientele at the Crossing is very similar to the clientele at the jail. In fact, when I started at the jail, there were a dozen Crossing students and former Crossing students in the jail. And I have nothing in common with them. How in the world am I going to relate to them? And it's interesting that once they know that you're just there for them, there's no hidden agenda, you're not trying to fix them, you're not trying to save them, you're just there to be their friend, to encourage them, to love them, they really don't care what skin color you are, or how much money you have, or how little money you have, or whether or not you've ever been in jail, or you haven't been in jail. Love transcends all of these differences that we have. And so Robert didn't care that Shannon and I were two nerdy, middle-aged white people. We cared for him, the first people in his life that have ever shown him love. So we're building this relationship with Robert and trying to figure what it means to have this kid start coming around our house that, we don't know real well, but we're starting to know. And one day we get a call from him. We didn't know it was from him because it was from the Elkhart County Jail. He got picked up on a Class C battery charge. And so now we start visiting Robert at the jail. My first experience in the jail was 2 years ago when Robert was incarcerated. At that point, I had no idea there was a jail ministry. I knew there was a chaplain, but knew nothing about what he did, nothing about the program. But Robert's in jail now, and we weren't even really thinking about it as ministry. We were just thinking, Robert's in jail, we need to go visit him. So he had twin boys born a month before he was arrested. So we'd go pick up his twin boys in Elkhart and take them to jail so they could see their dad through the video. If anybody's visited somebody in jail, it's a horrible system. It's through a telephone and video screen. And half the time the video doesn't work, or it's black and white. And when the video is working, the audio is usually terrible. But that's how we were visiting Robert, twice a week for 6 months. And we realized that we're the only people. Robert's 18 years old, and nobody else is visiting him. Never hears from his mom. His dad lives in Elkhart, but can't find it in him to drive to the jail to visit or to write a letter. There are no friends. You learn quickly when you go to jail who your friends and family are. And a lot of times you realize your friends, or you realize your family, maybe has nothing to do with biology or genealogy or blood. Because Robert's biological family was nowhere to be found. And that's probably the case with 75% of the guys in jail. You get there, and life just gets put on hold. You have no idea what's going on the outside. You have no control over what's going on the outside. And nobody is there to visit you, to write to you, to support you. Everybody disappears. So we're visiting Robert for 6 months or so while he's in the county jail. And it was his birthday that year, and so I called the sheriff up, and I said, I don't even know if this is possible, but is there any way that we could get in to see him face to face? It's his birthday. This is our relationship with him. We've known him for this long. And so Brad said, sure. So he gave us a one-day, all-inclusive pass to the Elkhart County Jail. And so we show up that day, and Robert was housed down in K-Pod. If anybody's been in the jail to visit, or you're a volunteer, you know the jail is divided into two sections. You have K-Pod when you walk into your right, which is maximum security, and there are 4 pods on the other end, A, B, C, and D, which are minimum and medium security. Robert was down in K-Pod. So we get into this classroom, we find our way down there, we get in this classroom, they bring Robert in, and it kind of surprised him because he just thought it was an attorney's visit, and he walks in, and there we are. And it was the first time we'd seen him in 6 months. And something happened during that visit that kind of changed the way he viewed us and we viewed him. Because what happened was, after 6 months of only seeing us, and then we show up to visit him, you build this relationship with someone, and you can have conversations with them that you cannot have with people you don't have a relationship with. It's the difference between building a relationship with somebody and preaching at them. And so my wife and I are kind of figuring out that maybe evangelism, maybe sharing the gospel, is less about going out in a street corner and preaching to people you don't know, or going door to door and passing out tracts. I'm not saying those things are bad, but maybe there's something more to this. Maybe it's you're having a conversation with a friend because you've built a relationship with them, and you're having a conversation with them, and then they start asking you questions. Why are you doing this? I mean, you visited me for twice a week for 6 months. You've only known me for a year, and now you're here at the jail. Why are you doing this when nobody else is doing it? And so then you get to share about the gospel just in the course of a conversation that you're having with a friend. And they're much more apt to listen to you when they know there's no hidden agenda and you're not trying to fix them. Everybody in their lives has been trying to fix them or trying to save them. Everybody they deal with, whether it's the intake officer at the jail, the courts, FSSA, CPS, the welfare department, everybody's trying to fix them, to interrogate them. When they know that you're just here to hang out because you just want to be there and hang out, it changes the dynamic. So we were able to have some really tough conversations with Robert because we had a relationship with him. We'd invested some time. And we thought we'd be there for 20 minutes because when you visit on the video conferencing thing out in the lobby, it's a 20-minute visit. And so we walk in, and we thought we had 20 minutes with him. We dropped my kids off at my parents' house in inner city Southwest, and they thought we'd be back in 45 minutes. Well, half hour rolled past, and an hour and a half, and 2.5 hours, and 3.5 hours, and we're still down in maximum security K-Pod in this classroom that we don't know how to get out of. And there are no officers anywhere to be seen. We're starting to get a little nervous, but we ended up spending 4 hours with Robert that evening. The very next day, he gets shipped off to Michigan City, unknowns to us, unknowns to him. When you're in the jail, you're just there temporarily. Once you take a plea bargain or you go to trial, you get shipped off somewhere else. Prison, work release, home detention. And a lot of times you don't know when it is. The officers just come in and call your name and you're gone. And so that's what happened with Robert the very next day. So we get a call from him when he finally gets settled into Michigan City. And we get a call from him, and we pick up the phone, and he answers by saying, "Hey, Mom and Dad." So something had changed. We didn't talk about this, but something had changed in this relationship. And so we started calling Robert. We have 4 kids now, and Robert's our oldest. And my other 3 kids are adopted. They don't look like me. They don't look like each other. They don't look like my wife. And so it wasn't a stretch for them to think of Robert as their older brother. He didn't look like them, but that's, my kids think that babies are made at the airport when you go and you pick one up and you come back. So Robert was made in jail. So we started referring to Robert as our oldest son. And again, Robert was working through this process of now, who really is my family? because my biological family is nowhere.